New footprint analysis may finally solve the deep-rooted mystery of Bigfoot. Proof of the beast has been inconclusive, exaggerated, or faked until now.
The prospect of sharing this planet with another bipedal primate is a remarkably intriguing one.
Never-before-seen evidence shows its existence is not only possible, but probable. Scientists pry open one of the most haunted objects in the world.
People witnessed and could see my deterioration. It really was a possession.
A malevolent box with dark powers.
When we realized what that box was doing to our family, I was very afraid of it.
Can this evil force be explained by science or the supernatural? Experts dig it up to get answers. In Kirksville, Missouri, local museum curator Jason Haxton and his son Ross arrive at an isolated farmhouse where they've hidden an object too dangerous to display in public. It's an item so feared and evil, Jason has kept it buried for more than 3 years. The Dibbuk Box. Within this reinforced military-grade case is an antique wine cabinet that may look harmless, but it unleashes a world of hell upon anyone unfortunate enough to possess it. Terrifying nightmares, debilitating illnesses, and intense pain are part of its curse. Something Jason's son knows all too well.
I'm trying to find explanations for certain events that happened to me, but I can tell you through experience, through 10 years of growing up with this thing, it's absolutely real.
Yet the box's history leads back much further, straight to the horrors of the Holocaust and the madman behind it. Did those unprecedented evils infuse the box with a malicious supernatural power? Desperate for answers, Jason risks extreme danger and exhumes the chest from its safe burial place underground, an act which in the past opened the door to demons who wished to possess him.
I'm willing and open for the Dybbuk Box to be looked by scientists, but anything they find or don't find will not negate the story of the Dybbuk Box and I believe a spiritual connection.
Now, experts will examine the box, testing for radiation, toxins, and unusual materials to shed light on what's causing these demonic events. If nothing physical is responsible for the Haxton's torment, could a malevolent supernatural force be the cause? An avid collector, Jason first learns about the artifact in 2004 when a colleague at his museum mentions it's for sale. The young colleague tells Jason that the seller is his roommate, a student from nearby Truman State University. The student had come across a fascinating box for sale with a warning about its dark past. He disregarded the advice and bought the mysterious object, thinking it might be fun to own. But shortly after its arrival, he became haunted by the box.
He starts losing his hair, electronics in his house start shutting off, and he just feels like he's possessed to some degree. There's something wrong with his life. Things are getting worse and spiraling out of control.
I knew its history and actually feared it, as did my children. Though I wanted to see it, I certainly didn't want it in my home.
Legend states it contains a Dybbuk,
In Jewish folklore, a Dibbuk is a spirit of a dead person who, instead of going on to the other world, becomes trapped here in the world of humans. It is able to possess another person. It is able to essentially inhabit them and make their personality go away and take hold of their body and make it do its will.
But curiosity and a passion for the past drive Jason to buy the box.
There really was a lot of excitement when the box arrived. I really think there might have been a spiritual force driving this artifact to me to unravel this story.
He has it delivered to his museum because he does not want to risk exposing his family to its forces. When the box arrives, he inspects it as he does any precious object, with gloves on to protect it. But it's not the Dibbuk box that needs protecting.
I took the gloves off just to get an interaction with it. And this pain came through me. This agonizing pain just touching the box as if a knife had come into me and just started slowly ripping up towards my throat. It really was terrifying. I was like, what have I done? Because I knew the previous stories, and that once it began, it never got better.
Right away, strange things start happening. Odd smells, electrical failures, and a bizarre run of bad luck among coworkers who soon plead with him to get it away from them. As the chest begins to control him, Jason is strangely compelled to not only keep it, but bring the evil right into his own home.
The first thing I noticed about the Dybbuk box were the smells. The house would just reek of cat piss. Horrible, horrible smells. And then, almost within a few minutes later, it would be jasmine flowers.
I have to say that this is an older home, so it's got its creaks and it's got its smells, but nothing like what happened the day the Dybbuk box came into this home. Things changed drastically, and that's why I knew this house. We'd lived here for decades, and so there were scents and odors and happenings that had never occurred in 20 years until that artifact entered this home. I really realized bringing this thing into my family and life, I had done something horrible.
Jason's physical and mental health deteriorate rapidly.
From the moment I touched the Dybbuk box, the bloody eyes, the choking, the welts, the fevers, the inability to sleep, the horror nightmares.
He seeks medical attention, but doctors can find nothing wrong. There's no explanation for his worsening condition. Soon, shadowy figures crawl up the walls before Jason's eyes. Lights instantaneously burn out. An onslaught of bugs infests the box and its surroundings. Ross, who's only 10 at the time, is petrified by apparitions of black fires that appear in the house.
We'd put the Dybbuk box somewhere, and that part of the house would just have all kinds of weird anomalies happening. Everyone knew it was the box.
The Haxtons come to a quick consensus. The Dybbuk box has to go.
I was really actually compelled to do anything that I thought would placate this artifact because I thought something was attached to it. I was obsessed with getting it away and doing anything that would contain and keep it away from myself, family, and others.
Jason turns to the Jewish faith for advice on how to properly seal the box and protect his family.
My dad finally sought the advice of a rabbi to contain the thing. And he built, from his instructions, a sort of acacia wood gold-lined ark to house the thing.
The same holy materials were used to construct the Ark of the Covenant, the chest built to hold the 10 Commandments. To silence the box and shield others from its evils, Jason buries it deep under the earth. But now, knowing full well the horrors it could unleash, the box will be opened for the first time in 3 years. It will undergo a series of scientific tests to finally determine what is provoking this demonic possession. The Pacific Northwest, home to an elusive beast at the forefront of popular imagination. Sightings are documented on nearly every continent, but the creature's existence and identity remain a hot topic of debate.
We have the image of a very large primate. Whether it's an ape or a hominid remains to be determined, but it clearly is distinct from humans in its gigantism and its robustness.
Bipedalism, the ability to walk upright, is the standard way to identify a hominid, a classification of mammals that includes humans, chimps, gorillas, and possibly Bigfoot. Now, newfound evidence in the form of huge plaster casts reveals anatomical characteristics unlike any bipedal primate on Earth today. In Pocatello, Idaho, Dr. Jeff Meldrum has been collecting Sasquatch footprints for nearly 20 years. With more than 250 specimens, he's cracking the Bigfoot code.
The assembled data in the form of the footprint casts constitutes by far the most compelling evidence for the existence of Sasquatch.
3D scans of plaster casts, a breakdown of bipedal movement, and a deep plunge into convergent evolutionary theories will finally help solve the mystery of what this wild man really is.
We have the record of something that is leaving gigantic human-like footprints in the soil. There's no question that these footprints exist, and so the question remains is what made them?
In Pocatello, Idaho, scientists will analyze footprint casts and footage of Bigfoot's upright motion to try and prove its existence. The mystery of Bigfoot dates back hundreds of years, but the Bigfoot name didn't become an iconic household word until 1958.
A construction worker in Northern California began to discover these large human-like footprints around his bulldozer when he reported to work in the morning.
Then, in the 1960s, a series of sightings catapulted Bigfoot into national attention. Ken Gerhard is a field researcher and an expert on the monsters of the world.
Most people described an upright, man-like creature standing anywhere from 6.5 to 8 or 9 feet tall, very massive and muscular with broad shoulders and weighing several hundred pounds.
The beast is covered in hair, and the way it moves is unlike any creature on 2 legs.
They have a very pronounced arm swing, and many people have described them as almost look like they're gliding or cross-country skiing because they have such a fluid motion in the way that they walk.
On April 12, 2012, retired police officer Ken Storch witnesses it firsthand. He heads to a rural area of western Pennsylvania in search of an Indian burial ground, but instead finds a Bigfoot with a fresh kill.
And I see this deer. It's about a 60-pound, 75-pound doe, young yearling, and it's hanging upside down, and I can tell that it's dead. It was at this point that the shoulders and head turned, and I'm face to face with, I'm not looking at a monkey, I'm not looking at a gorilla. I'm looking at something that is more human than primate. It was like, holy, okay. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him. I knew that I was staring at something really, really incredible. His nostrils are flaring. I can tell he's taking in my scent. And in one graceful movement, he pivots and took off. You could see the muscles rippling in his back.
And it runs in true Bigfoot form.
His strides were not only long, but very graceful, almost had a gliding, springing action to it.
Ken pours plaster casts of the beast's print, bigger than a size 14 human foot. The casts reveal clues about its maker's massive size and unique walk that may lead to a never-before-seen Bigfoot breakthrough. A religious artifact known as the Dibbuk Box has come to Kirksville, Missouri. This box contains a Dybbuk, a demonic spirit that causes electrical disturbances and possesses its owners by inflicting night terrors, illness, and paralyzing pain. Now, scientists hope to find an explanation. Rabbi Gershon Winkler has studied Jewish history and theology for more than 25 years. Of his many books, Dybbuk focuses on Jewish possession and exorcism.
Dybbuk comes from the Hebrew word dovek. Dovek means to cleave, to connect. The phenomena of a wandering soul cleaving to its victim so it could live in a body again. So that's why we call a possessed person one who has in them a Dybbuk. Sometimes a person just does not feel finished enough, resolved enough here, so that if their life is taken abruptly, the body is dead, but the essence of the person, the name of the person is still alive, but has no body, and is not ready to leave yet and to move into the other realms, the next birth of the next reality. At which point, desperate to be embodied in order to finish what has not been resolved, it will seek out someone to possess.
But this Dybbuk seems to deviate from the ancient folklore. Instead of taking over a person's body and soul, this evil spirit attaches itself to an inanimate object, like the box or its contents. So could it be the objects inside that are making people sick? Sabina Magliocco is professor of anthropology and folklore at California State University and an author of books about religion.
There are legends of objects that are haunted or possessed or otherwise bad juju, right? They bring people bad luck, they cause things to happen, and you can think of a number of dolls or other kinds of objects. They're just overall bad.
Inside of it then are a granite statue to pray to and hold your thoughts, a chalice for wine, which is typically used in religious ceremony, and flame in a candlestick with tentacles.
Also, a dried rose and locks of hair bound with cord, eerily haunting keepsakes of deceased loved ones saved by a previous owner of the box. When Jason touches them, he experiences the worst physical attack of his life.
I started having the terror. My eyes were bloody. I was choking constantly. I was breaking out in welts. I kept saying, this cannot be real. It's got to be poison.
Jason wants to get rid of the box. Something won't let him. Something like possession. Yet he needs to know if the chest is making him sick. At the museum, he routinely tests artifacts for dangerous chemicals which were used to preserve them.
I thought I was poisoning myself. I feared that that was really the cause of the illnesses and these seemingly supernatural things.
He and his son Ross test the Dibbuk Box and its contents for arsenic and cyanide contamination. The results are negative, but something is causing the pain, illnesses, and electrical problems.
Before the Dibbuk Box, we really had no problems. The day the Dibbuk Box came into our lives, that pretty much all changed instantaneously. The abnormalities, the smells, the cold, the apparitions, they just were constantly happening.
New analysis may reveal physical anomalies that could be the cause. If not, maybe an otherworldly spirit is to blame for the havoc the box wreaks. The Dibbuk Box is a demonic artifact possessed by an evil spirit, inflicting horrible suffering on anyone who comes near it.
I'm curious and didn't realize, probably like the other owners, surely something couldn't be this malevolent inside of a simple container.
From the moment it comes into Jason Haxton's hands, he witnesses bizarre electrical failures. And he and his family suffer a string of torturous events and maladies. Despite the danger, Jason's driven to understand its powers. He uses a black light to examine the box for anything unusual. He finds no biological residue that might cause his symptoms. Despite all the physical ailments, Jason has a hard time letting go of the box.
The Dibbuk Box became a dark secret of mine. Once I willingly took this artifact into my life and my family, I could feel a desperation, just trapped and not knowing what to do. It was scary.
My dad describes it as possession. I describe it as obsession. I actually believe the box almost makes you obsessed with it. And I'm not sure how, but it will manipulate you to do things.
Fearing for his life, his family, and others, he realizes the only way to escape its wrath is to bury it.
I have removed it to a place where I can keep my eye on it and yet put it into the earth, because the rabbis have said that the earth will pull its power away and it will become just a simple vessel if you give it the time.
Still, he needs answers in case the demon ever returns.
I had to understand this thing to solve this. I thought, for my own peace of mind, to get rid of it, to get it out of my life again.
He discovers that two of its previous owners suffered horrifying ailments. An antiques dealer endured nightmares and business troubles the minute he purchased the box in 2001. And when a college student bought it, his failing health and degraded mental state forced him to get rid of the box for good. To determine how it all started, Jason travels across the U.S., investigating and recording everything he can about the box. He unearths its true origins in the troubled days leading to World War II.
It starts with a woman who in 1938 had been dabbling in the occult.
She performs seances with a Ouija board, hoping to bring forth a spirit to quiet the unrest in Europe. She quickly realizes the entity she summoned is demonic and conducts a ritual to seal it inside the box forever.
And they kept it in there, and that's where it stayed, until people kept playing with the box. The more the box was played with and opened and sold and resold, the more the spirit learned how to go in and out. And the more the spirit felt at home, and the harder it is to get rid of it, to send it back where it came from.
She had brought it with her to the United States when she immigrated after the war. However, nobody in the family was allowed to open the wine cabinet. And in fact, she wanted it buried with her. But the laws in the Jewish cemetery where she was buried prohibited her burial with such an object. And so the family was getting rid of it along with some of her other possessions at the estate sale.
Although it might mean opening the gates of hell again, the Dibbuk Box is now unearthed for the first time in years and heads for the lab at Truman State University. Scientists will test it for material abnormalities. If they can find no physical source causing the electrical disruption, illness, and pain, science may have to turn to the supernatural for an explanation. Bigfoot is one of the most mysterious monsters in the world. Its origin and how closely it's related to humans is still steeped in speculation. Some experts suggest the hairy beast is a descendant of Gigantopithecus, a species of ape believed to stand 9 feet tall and weigh half a ton.
Gigantopithecus was known from Asia. I would personally be delighted if Gigantopithecus still existed.
Others say Bigfoot might be an Australopithecine, a primate that has the skull of a chimp but walks upright like a human. But there's also the possibility Bigfoot is a close evolutionary relative to humans. The human primate evolutionary tree is extremely complex and tough to climb. Independent expert Dr. Elizabeth Rega, Associate Professor of Anatomy at Western University, explains further.
What we're seeing now from the fossil evidence is that instead of being a sort of straight line or even a tree, it's very bushy. That there were, in fact, especially in the African environments, a variety of different coexisting primates, and even hominids coexisting.
Most scientists recognize 15 to 20 different species of early humans. 2 of those were discovered in just the past 10 years. Homo floresiensis, a group of 3.5-foot tall beings, nicknamed the Hobbit species, and the Denisovans, who lived in Siberia at the same time as Neanderthals.
If the rule of the past was multiple hominid species coexisting, why would the present be an exception? And is it? And that's the question.
Humans may be the most prevalent hominid on Earth, but Bigfoot might be another hiding in the forests, closer than we think. Now, brand new Bigfoot evidence, cemented in massive footprint casts, helps bring the monster from the forest to the forefront of science. Dr. Jeff Meldrum is professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University and owner of the largest collection of Bigfoot footprint casts in the world.
I've amassed quite a collection of evidence bearing on the potential existence of Sasquatch. Evidence which I think is really significant and may really provide some insights into what the nature of Sasquatch is.
Now, Dr. Meldrum analyzes the plaster prints to uncover clues about Bigfoot's movement.
These casts are important. They are the record of the impression of a foot in the soil, and as such, they tell us not only something about the anatomy, but also about the dynamics of the step the creature takes.
But whatever walked on 2 legs to create these footprints is perplexing. They don't appear to be human or ape, rather, a strange combination of the 2.
At first glance, you might think that they are just enlarged copies of a human footprint, but nothing could be further from the truth. For example, they lack the well-developed longitudinal arch that is so characteristic of the human foot. They're much broader for their length than is the human foot, especially through the heel. They have relatively longer toes than the typical human foot. All of these differences from the human anatomy are exactly what I would expect of a large bipedal primate with a foot that's more primitive than ours, one that retains some of those ape-like characteristics.
But apes have divergent big toes that stick out like thumbs, so their feet look much more like hands. and are uniquely adapted for climbing. Bigfoot is better suited to the ground and can handle even the most rugged terrain.
So the intriguing aspect of the casts is they show this intermediacy of adaptation. A flat foot, non-divergent big toe, but a remarkable degree of flexibility and prehension that suggests that they are uniquely adapted to bipedalism in a rugged, steep environment, as we find in the forested mountains of the northwestern continent.
And the beast's foot also has other strange characteristics.
In fact, there have been dermal ridges found, and they're very similar to the fingerprints that humans and primates have on our hands and feet.
But the pattern of the dermal ridges on the bottom of the Bigfoot casts does not match those known to be primate or human.
This is a unique adaptation. So what does this mean? We have something that's not human, and it's certainly not a great ape. So what is it?
One of the things you have to be aware of course, is the morphology of the footprint maker. But another equally important factor is the substrate. What's going on with the ground? Is the ground mushy? How deep is it mushy? Is it slimy? Is it sandy? Because footprints are not really a two-dimensional entity. They're a three-dimensional entity, even if they're a shallow three-dimensional entity. And because of the mechanics of gait, both in humans and in non-human animals, you're going to be able to see the motion in many instances in the footprint.
These casts may ultimately substantiate claims that a massive hominid named Bigfoot does exist. In Kirksville, Missouri, Jason Haxton discovers an eerie truth about the Dibbuk Box, a possessed artifact that terrorizes its owners with physical and mental maladies. Some experts attribute a collection of symptoms, including headaches, anxiety, and nausea, to exposure to electromagnetic fields or radiation.
My first fear was that there might be some type of coating on the box.
Jason and his son Ross's preliminary tests negate any contamination or exposure. The need for answers obsesses Jason. With the help of experts and researchers around the U.S., he traces its origin back to the Holocaust, which in fact brings the story back to his very own hometown and a man named Harry Laughlin, the father of the eugenics movement.
He did research that wrote laws on sterilizing people, limiting interracial marriages, and restricting who could come to America, particularly Jewish populations.
Laughlin eventually becomes Hitler's mentor.
So the Nuremberg laws of Adolf Hitler are American laws first by Harry Hamilton Laughlin of Kirksville, Missouri. So you almost wonder, what are the chances for this kind of a story that occurred over decades to come full circle and land in Kirksville? I truly do not believe it's an accident that the Dybbuk Box came here.
With confirmed ties between the box and the most malevolent man in history, Jason reluctantly digs up the demonic vessel. Experts will run tests to find out if the strange effects and symptoms are caused by a dark supernatural power. Jason Haxton buried the Dibbuk Box years ago to escape its vindictive wrath. Now, he risks everything to exhume it for scientific analysis.
We dug up the box, and it hasn't been opened in 3 years, so we are very excited to see scientifically what they can tell us about this box that we don't know.
Is the box radioactive, charged with electromagnetic energy? Or is it really haunted by a demonic spirit?
The reason that people have suspected that there may be something paranormal about this box is certain reactions that they've had to it. Persistent nightmares, feelings of cold, headaches, and things like this.
Dr. Tanner Edis is professor of physics at Truman State University.
I am open to the possibility of objects having all sorts of powers we don't know about. I mean, the history of science tells us that we have often screwed up in the past, and we're fairly certain that some of what we know right now, we think we know, is wrong.
Dr. Edis and his team will work to get to the bottom of what's going on.
When you are reacting to the box in the way of having headaches and nightmares and things like that, it does demand an explanation.
Using one of the most powerful microscopes known to science, Dr. Edis and his colleagues test the box for signs of radioactivity, which could provide a scientific answer for all the mayhem. But if the test is negative, there may be a devilish poltergeist to blame.
I think it's definitely correct to say right now that there is a lot more about this universe that we don't know than we do know.
Bigfoot is an enormous creature believed to live in forests throughout the globe. New 3D casts paint a clear picture of how Bigfoot moves. And they prove no ape or human could create a footprint like this.
Great apes such as gorillas and chimpanzees are capable of walking on two legs in a temporary fashion. We call this facultative bipedalism. But the anatomy of their pelvis especially, and their knees and ankles, preclude them from walking habitually on 2 feet.
Their walk is shaky as they shift their weight from all fours to 2 legs.
The body mass is really significant. Their sternum sticks out at an angle instead of being straight up and down as ours. So the gorilla is going to have what we call compliant gait here, which means that the knee is never fully extended. It's sort of a Groucho Marx kind of walk.
In reported Bigfoot sightings, the creature's stride is usually described as smooth and gliding, which isn't characteristic of the chimpanzee walk either.
Chimpanzees are stuck with lurching back and forth so that they can balance themselves over the supporting leg. We have the ability to use our hip muscles, our gluteus medius and minimus muscles, to balance ourselves.
Humans have evolved a remarkably efficient means of walking on 2 legs with our lighter weight and a very extended, elongated limb posture. We have what we call a striding gait.
That striding gait gives humans a bobbing motion, going up and down between steps. However, when walking, Bigfoot doesn't lock its knees. This produces a smooth gliding motion. Dr. Meldrum suggests that just as birds and bats both develop the ability to fly, despite being unrelated species, Bigfoot and humans both evolved to walk upright. The theory, called convergent evolution, proposes that similar traits arise when different species face the same environmental factors.
The footprints attributed to Sasquatch, I find it very interesting because it suggests the feet of a committed biped, lacking that divergent big toe, with the foot no longer acting as a grasping organ, but as a propulsive one.
And there's no way for such an enormous creature to live in trees or hang from its arms like an ape. Another theory is that Bigfoot isn't a primate, but an early relative of humans that never learned to use tools and missed out on cranial developments. But to date, DNA testing has not been able to reveal its origin. Bigfoot hair recovered in the wild is often tainted before it arrives at the lab.
Unfortunately, extracting DNA from some hair samples is a challenge. And as of yet, the hair that is the most consistent with the morphology that we've associated with a large primate has not yielded a DNA sample that could be sequenced.
Other possible samples of teeth and fecal matter have been too degraded to test, and the alleged bodies of the beast have never been verified. Proving Bigfoot's existence would be much easier if there were fossils to examine. But the forest is an unforgiving environment when it comes to leaving bones behind.
The formation of a fossil is a very random occurrence. An animal has to die instantly and literally be buried or preserved in the exact right conditions.
Forested or tropical environment is very hostile to bone preservation. So it's not surprising in a forested context that you would be missing the osteological evidence.
With more than 90% of the world's fossils still buried in the earth, countless species are there, waiting to be discovered.
There's no question that these are missing elements of the equation, but in and of themselves are not damning omissions because of the nature of the species that we're considering. One that's remarkably rare, that's long-lived, that's widely dispersed in environments that are not very conducive to the preservation of bone or its fossilization.
Until concrete evidence is obtained, there will be those who doubt Bigfoot walks among us.
As inconvenient as the prospect might be for some, the fact that these footprints point to the existence of a giant bipedal primate is one that really cannot be easily set aside.
Most of us would like to think that we're not alone out there, that one of the other members of the hominid lineage still exists. It's very exciting, and most scientists would in fact welcome that.
I'm quite convinced that such a species exists. To walk away from this evidence at this point would be a tragedy, in my opinion. It would be a disservice to science.
Nevertheless, there's something out there making tracks that defy explanation by any other means. And it just may be the elusive Bigfoot. Electrical disturbances and mental and physical illnesses are evidence of the Dybbuk Box's powers. Coming up, scientists reveal the results of the box's elemental composition tests to determine once and for all if there's a dark power within the Dibbuk Box. At Truman State University, a haunted artifact called the Dibbuk Box is being examined by Dr. Tanner Edis for radioactive and toxic materials. Every owner of the mysterious box reports odd instances of electrical failure and extreme cases of physical illness. Now, Jason and Ross Haxton may finally learn the truth about the object that nearly destroyed their lives. They start with the box's exterior.
If you're looking at something like the Dibbuk Box, speculating that it might have, say, for example, some form of electromagnetic energy associated with it, creating the symptoms people describe, one of the questions a physicist would ask would be, what would be a power source for something like this? When we apply the Geiger counter, what we are looking for are signs of radioactivity, which is the clicks that you hear on a Geiger counter. And you're hearing the occasional click, but that doesn't mean anything. It's just what you get from the background all the time. It would be only meaningful if you had a rate that was above background, and I'm not hearing that.
All right.
So at least from the outside, you're getting nothing.
Okay, well, we can open up.
Everything was completely at background level, insofar as we could tell. So we're going to need to take a look at what's going on inside, so we might as well open the thing.
Next, they do what they've managed to avoid for years and open the Dibbuk Box.
Away she goes.
Dr. Edis scans the interior of the box. Again, no signs of radioactivity.
This basically is a non-radioactive box.
Thank God. We certainly don't want something radioactive really in our lives.
Next, they use UV frequencies to see if anything unusual illuminates under black light, like chemical or biological agents.
I mean, you can see that there's some glue spots on it, hardly unusual for a wooden box. And there's quite a bit of your usual grime. So nothing here is really jumping out as beyond the ordinary.
There's no evidence of toxicity that could cause serious sickness. In a last cutting-edge effort, they put the Dibbuk Box through one more examination. And it goes far beyond any test ever performed on a supernatural object.
Hello, Dr. Shin.
For assistance, they turn to Dr. George Shin, a professor at Truman University who specializes in electron microscopy. Dr. Shin takes metal and wood scrapings to view under 1,000 to 10,000 times magnification.
Well, this is, I think, the surface of one of the wood particles.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing to see how much detail there is as it...
We're looking at some of the cellulosic material of the cell wall, of the plant cells that actually make up the wood.
To analyze the samples in even greater detail, they use a scanning electron microscope. The microscope slams electrons into the samples to reveal their elemental composition, including any toxins that are present. The results reflect normal primary elemental components. Without a scientific explanation, it seems the only source for its horror must be supernatural.
The majority of scientists are skeptical about paranormal claims in particular. On the other hand, I know of many scientists who argue that there is something to it, that all this smoke is due to some fire behind it.
My understanding of spirits, perhaps, maybe even energies, has kind of changed to some degree. I don't have any other explanation for it. I just don't.
Perhaps in the future, a test may be created that can scan the box in such a way as to tell us what is truly at the heart of these atrocities.
I tend to believe now there is really more to it. There appears to be something spiritual, and that is something that can't be shown by science.
The Dibbuk Box is once again underground in an undisclosed location to prevent someone else from digging it up and suffering the same fate.